At Consumer Cellular, you get the same exact coverage as the largest carriers, but for up to half the cost. Same thing, up to half the cost. Up to half the cost for the same thing. 50% the money for 100% the same thing. I hope I'm making myself clear. Consumer Cellular. When freedom calls, we're here to answer. Call us at 1-888-FREEDOM.
Half the cost savings based on cost of Consumer Cellular single-line 5GB data plan with unlimited talk and text compared to lowest cost single-line postpaid unlimited talk, text, and data plan offered by T-Mobile and Verizon May 2023.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. It may be a slightly low energy pod today because we are recording at 9 o'clock on Sunday morning to accommodate Kieran's weekender. Kieran was on one yesterday, he's going on another one today. Where were you yesterday, Kieran?
I was at the wonderful Hyde Park in central London, and I saw the Stereophonics, Johnny Marr. So you can imagine I was in Smith's. He played 5 Smith songs and one by Electronic, so it was just fantastic. And then Pearl Jam, who I hate to see how many times I've seen them, but they never failed to disappoint.
Yeah, I felt like I was here, Kieran, because it's like the BBC live tweet from Glastonbury. It's like at one stage, I'm trying to watch a race here. I'm going to turn this phone off. So, you missed an opportunity, I understand, Kieran, to make a bit of profit on the day.
I did. I have got this Pearl Jam football shirt, so it's got Pearl Jam on the front and it's got England #7 on the back. And this bloke offered me 95 quid for it. And why 95 quid? I don't know. And I was sorely tempted, but I thought, well, if I return home topless all the way to Brighton, yeah, it's not fair on the people on the train, to be frank.
Also, do you know what, Kieran? I would have given you another 95 quid just for the look on the Baroness's face. Because in all my years of going to festivals drinking, I've never ever came home in any state of undress. And the idea that the teetotal accountant comes home minus his T-shirt and just trying to explain to the Baroness what happened. It's questions day, Kieran, which is nothing to the questions you would have got had you sold that T-shirt for £95. We've got some very good questions today, a couple of which are historically based, which is interesting. Our first question comes from Nick in Preston. And Nick in Preston has, every now and again, I don't know how this happens with producer guy, he seems to have a system whereby topical questions get sort of seeded in, while some poor sod who's been sitting on a question for 2 years has to wait for another week before it appears. But Nick in Preston says, in times of austerity, is it right that the compulsory licence fee funded BBC is buying TV rights from the already insanely wealthy Premier League and Champions League? I suppose you could turn that question on its head, Kieran, and ask Nick why he doesn't want people to watch the Premier League and Champions League highlights on mainstream TV.
Yeah, I think the issue of broadcasting is always a sensitive one. If you want to watch the Champions League this season, you have to have both a Amazon subscription, which I think will cost you, I think it's at least 80 quid, might be 100 quid. Then you've got BT Sport, which is 25 notes a month on top. So it is expensive business. The BBC have bought the highlights. As we know, there's going to be some sort of match of the day. And that I think the view is that's going to cost £20 million. And there was a story all about this in the Mail on Friday, saying the EFL are furious. But if you read the Daily Mail, there's always somebody furious, as we both know, because apparently the BBC could have had the EFL highlights package for just £500,000 a year, compared to the 20 million they're paying for the Champions League rights. Yeah, and my view is, well, why can't they have both?
Exactly, yeah.
Because, for 500 grand, it does seem that is perhaps an opportunity lost. I spoke to one of my marketing chums to say, okay, you understand these, and we spoke to other people in football. I think there was a sense that perhaps the BBC are a bit lost at times in terms of their strategy, because I know people that are cancelling BT Sport.
Yeah.
but they still like to watch the matches. So you can see the benefits there. And somebody I spoke to in marketing says, well, if we go to marketing 101, we talk about the 4Ps and should the BBC have done it? You start first P is price. At £20 million, is that good value for the licence payer? If you're a football fan, you might say yes. If you're not a football fan, you might say no. Certainly, the EFL does look like a really good price. Yeah. Then he says, well, what about the product? And who wants to watch the highlights of Morecambe versus Rochdale? Fans of Morecambe and Rochdale mainly, but I still watch. I'll watch matches. Yeah, I don't care who it is.
Same here.
I think will they get the same ratings? No, they won't. What about then? The third P is your place, and I think here the BBC's got a bit of a problem. Where would the natural place be for the highlights package? Would it be if it's after match of the day? Then I think they'd struggle to get decent viewing figures. It's not natural for BBC 3 or BBC 4. It's probably not natural for BBC 2 either. So I think they're a bit lost on a Saturday. Although, of course, you used to do match of the day too, and that was quite often. That was BBC 2, wasn't it, on a Sunday?
Yeah.
So I think the BBC, but if they show the WSL matches, and why can't they show the EFL as well? So I do think it's a lost opportunity. And the fourth P is promotion. Well, if I was a front of shirt sponsor, or I was a commercial partner, I'd be absolutely delighted that the BBC were broadcasting it, because it's more eyeballs for your product. So it's a weird one. Should they do the Champions League rights, which, going back to what Nick said, I think that's quite good. As a consumer, I might now think twice. I'm in the process of canning off BT Sport because there's nothing on during the summer anyway. Mm. Will I renew when the Champions League starts? I don't normally renew until we get out of the group stages, because frankly it's a procession. It's dull. So it's an interesting one, but I genuinely believe that they could do both.
I agree with you. My guess is, in terms of place, I imagine they would have the highlights on a Wednesday night. I think they will create a regular 10 o'clock, 10:30 slot. They will call it Champions League Match of the Day. I don't think there's much use having a highlights package that isn't until 3 days after the last game, if you see what I mean. So I imagine that's what they will do. They'll brand it very similarly to Match of the Day, have a different host to the Saturday and Sunday shows. But you're absolutely right about the EFL highlights. I mean, I get quite... I mean, they were tucked away in Quest, weren't they, for a couple of seasons with Colin Murray hosting. I get quite cross on a Saturday afternoon if Palace are away and I can't get there, and you're watching Jeff Stelling and they'll say, you've got to see this goal. What an amazing goal they just scored at Accrington or Morecambe or whatever. And you think, I'd love to see that goal. But there's no highlights package for you to look forward to. So I do agree. I could never understand why there can't be an EFL highlights package on a Saturday, even if it's straight after Match of the Day on a Saturday night. I can understand the option there. The Daily Mail will take any excuse to give the BBC a kicking, whatever happens. The BBC could show the Champions League for nothing, and the Daily Mail would find a reason to get annoyed about that. And of course, they're annoyed about the BBC giving UEFA 20 million quid. It's exactly what British people shouldn't be giving European people any sort of money, let alone for something as trivial as football. But it's an interesting one. I think most people will be quite happy to see the Champions League highlights on the BBC, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
And like you say, in terms of broadcasting money, unfortunately, £20 million looks a lot of money, but compared to the rest of the deals, it's not. Now, just one pod after saying I don't understand parachute payments, we have a question about parachute payments, which comes from Alex Skidmore. I can only apologise, Alex, for the 3 years of hell you must have had at primary school with that name. It's a cracking name. Alex Skidmore says, Kieran, I know you're not a huge fan of the parachute payment system, which is true, we've established that, but how would any alternative proposal to the parachute payment system ensure clubs like mine, West Brom, and others like Burnley and Norwich are not heavily handicapped through operating sustainably at a time when other owners are actively gambling with their own club's future, chasing a costly dream?
Yeah, I think Alex has raised a valid point here. I'm not opposed to parachute payments. My view is you get rid of the need for parachute payments, and then they automatically go. And my concern is the overall distribution of money within the game. The gaps are too big. Reduce those gaps, and you get rid of the parachutes. And remember, we've also got parachute payments in the EFL, but between the Championship and League One, between League Two and the National League, that they're quite significant. It's a real conundrum, because if you've got those clubs that are not reliant on owner investments, they are at a disadvantage when they get relegated. If we take the case of West Brom, because I was talking to somebody about this earlier this week, and they said, well, just go and give them compulsory wage cuts. I said, well, there's two issues here. First of all, you've not checked the data. And as you know, I do like data. The last time when West Brom were relegated in 2018, the following season, there was a 50% reduction in the wage bill. So clubs do have wage reduction clauses in contracts. In order for clubs to be able to break even following relegation from the Premier League, even if the parachute payments money was given to the EFL and evenly distributed, you would probably be looking at 80% pay cuts. And again, I spoke to a chief executive or a director at a club which has been relegated from the Premier League, and they said, what are we supposed to do? First of all, there's not just problems with parachute payments. There's problems with clubs getting promoted and coming straight down again too often. Yeah. And then they get, in order to have a yo-yo, you've got to have both halves of the yo. So it's all very well people getting their knickers in a twist about there's too many clubs getting relegated who are getting promoted again, but then they're getting relegated again. So there's that whole area of distribution needs to be addressed. How do you sign a player in January when you are 17th or 18th in the Premier League, when you're offering them an 80% pay cut in 6 months' time? It's simply not going to happen. And therefore, it sort of guarantees that club's going to be relegated. So it's a much broader issue. I would personally look towards a greater issue of pooling of revenues. So, I'd move to the NFL style model where the home teams keep 60% of the revenue. The rest of it gets pooled and is distributed within football. We do the same in respect of some of the commercial deals as well. And that will take away the rather boring football that we have, in the sense that people say, oh, it's really exciting. No, it's not. It's the same clubs in the Champions League every season. Yeah, we've just been talking about Champions League. Well, why should it be the same 4 or 5 clubs every year?
I think both halves of the yo is now my new favourite expression. It sounds like one of those American self-help books.
It does.
You need both halves of the yo. Let this book.
Hey, well, we should write a self-help book with that as the title.
Shit, if people are turning to us for self-help, Kieran, then the world is.
Well, they've turned to Jimmy Carr for it. Let's face it, it can't be any worse.
They don't turn to Jimmy Carr. He wrenches them towards him. The idea of taking self-help from Jimmy Carr, can't even sort his hairline out. God love him. Declan Moody has a question, and it's a question he says that he's been wondering about for a while. When Leicester won the Premier League in 2016, that is quite a while to be wondering about anything. Declan, yes. A lot of bookies and punters made a big deal about people who won £50,000 through putting £10 randomly on them to win it at the start of the season, as if the bookies had made huge losses. Now, obviously, they would have made all the money back from people betting on the other big clubs to win the league that year. So my question is, do we know how much of a win-loss did the bookies actually make from Leicester winning that league title? Did they benefit or lose?
Oh, they made a fortune, because, what happened was, as Leicester got closer and closer to winning the title, all of the media outlets were desperately scrabbling around for the half a dozen people who put a tenner on Leicester to win at 500 to 1. So the bookmakers make their money from all long odds.
Yeah.
Because the nature of it is they because the bookmakers have to be competitive against one another, the odds in terms of the favourites tend to be quite fairly priced, and then for those other runners and riders, they can quote whatever they want, and it's just a loyalty bet. Very very good year for the bookmakers was 2016, because everybody thought it was going to be Chelsea, Liverpool, Manchester United, or Manchester City, or perhaps a few on Spurs as well, of course.
Yeah. The worst thing that can happen to a bookmaker is for the favourite to win anything. I think sometimes, Kieran, people who don't have a bet don't fully realise that the reason a horse or a football team is the favourite, it's not because the book has decided that they're favourite, it's because that's the horse or the football team that most money has been put on.
Yes, it's all to do with the weight of money. You're absolutely right.
It's all to do with the weight of money. So clearly, if a horse is an even money favourite, that means not much money is going on with the other horses. So they want that one to lose. But also, Declan, the answer to the question is nearly always the bookies are going to win. Don't worry.
Yes.
Stephen Wise has a question, and Stephen starts quite sweetly, Kieran, by pointing out that he had you as a tutor at MMU, and you were great! ! You always made accounting theory fun and engaging! ! I would have knocked a couple of points off for the excessive use of exclamation marks, Kieran. But it's lovely that you were great and you made accounting theory fun and engaging. Imagine if you turned up topless for those lessons because you'd sold a T-shirt to a random bloke outside. Stephen says he's been reading about Barcelona impairing the values of some players to make their financial situation look worse in the short term, but better after this accounting period. Have any Premier League clubs impaired the values of their players, and is that allowed within FFP rules here? I guess it would be allowed in the case of a career-ending injury, but I assume there may be a justification for reduced carrying value on players in light of a quieter market due to COVID. Is it difficult to agree what the right level of impairment would be?
Right. For those people unfamiliar with the concept of impairment, what happens? What happens is if you take a look at the value of a footballer in the annual accounts, it's cost less the amortization charge. So if you sign a player for 50 million quid on a 5-year contract, you say at the end of year one, you've got 1 year's amortization has gone. So you take 50, you take away the 10 amortization, and you say, well, his accounting value is 40 million. Now, what you also have to do is if you've got to say, well, are we going to get that 40 million back? So there could be reasons why you don't think you get that 40 million pounds back, in which case you have to do this thing called an impairment where you reduce him to the market value. So it could be that he's shite. And that's a technical phrase we use in the world of accounting. It could be that he's had a career-ending injury. It could be, I think was it Schneiderlin? Was it Schweinsteiger? When Mourinho came into Manchester United and he wanted to show that he was boss, so he sent one of the players who'd been signed by Van Gaal into train with the kids, and United wrote down their value. Or it could be due to relegation. So if we take a look at what happened with Aston Villa in 2016, they wrote down the value of the whole squad by 35 million. Wow. Now, the issue that Stephen has raised, is it difficult on what the right level of impairment would be? It's absolutely. And this is where I think, is manipulation the wrong word? No, probably not. This is where the manipulation of the numbers can arise, because if you've got quite a bit of a financial fair play overhang, you remember you're allowed to lose 105 million over 3 years. It could be that you've only lost 30 or 40 million. There's a good excuse for shifting a load of costs in impairment, reduce the value of your squad. That increases your losses this year, which means that you'll be charging less amortization in future years, and that will allow you to be in a better position for FFP. So I'm quite sceptical when I see some of the impairment calculations put through. Especially some of the stuff that we've seen in respect of COVID, because if you take a look at the actual amount of money being spent in the transfer market, it's not fallen by as much as some of the clubs are claiming. So this is a classic creative accounting issue, which in my view is not really addressed by the authorities with enough attention.
We started that question, Kieran, with Stephen praising you as a tutor. Perhaps we'd like to end it by reassuring Stephen that he was a brilliant student.
Steve-O, you were great, and I hope that your career is going. Drop me a line, and I'll send you a signed copy of the book. Mainly because there aren't any unsigned copies of the book, and it's good that you're back in touch.
Oh, no wonder he thought you were fun and engaging if you called him Steve-O. Called me Steve-O. That guy's great. Question from James Leedale. And I like the way this question from James Leedale starts, because James says, I think I remember Kieran saying, the reason I like that is because I can't tell you the amount of times I've been in a pub before a Palace game and someone's asked me a football finance question and I go, I think I remember Kieran saying it was amortising. I think I remember Kieran saying that the profit or loss considered for FFP purposes is the parent company's profit and loss. Does this not open an opportunity for creative accounting or using profits of any of the other owners' other companies to reduce the group's loss? Is this what the City Group and Man City exploited in UEFA's unsuccessful ban?
Yes and no. The City Group's finances were not reviewed by UEFA. It was those of Manchester City Football Club. But are there opportunities to manipulate figures as far as groups are concerned? Yes, there are. So if you take a look at Manchester City's directors' pay, it's zero, and you go, "Well, that's blimey." I thought City were big payers, and therefore, if it's a zero cost, nothing goes through against financial fair play, which is great. If you then take a look at the City Football Group and you take a look at the directors' pay, I think they call it senior management pay there, it's about 8 or 9 million. So you go, oh, hold on, who's paying that? Why Manchester City not on the hook for any of that? There is an opportunity for money to be transferred around groups. I'm not saying it takes place, of course, but it is, once again, another form of creative accounting opportunity. I'm with you entirely, James, and I'm sure you were a good student wherever you studied as well.
Oh, that's nice. Let's not alienate those people who didn't go to university, Kieran, or indeed were asked to leave after 3 months. Connor Daly as our next question. Connor says, I'd be interested in hearing your opinion on the issuance of so-called football mini-bonds in recent years as a method of raising finance for football clubs. QPR issued such a bond to raise finance to develop their training ground, while Norwich City and AFC Wimbledon have similarly issued bonds in the past. Indeed, at our first live show, Kieran, we spoke quite at length about this. Do you see these as unduly risky investments for retail investors, in this case fans, or as a creative and cheaper way for clubs to raise finance in challenging times?
This is a very fair question, Connor. And the first thing I would say is that we are not qualified to give financial advice. Neither myself or Kevin, or producer Guy, or Finley.
Finley's better qualified than I am, to be perfectly honest.
I'll be honest. I have lent money via these bonds to football clubs. I won't say which clubs, but I've been involved in 2 or 3 of these. And what happens is the football club effectively gives you a piece of paper, and you give the football club money, and then they pay you interest. And the interest rates are far higher than you would get than if you stuck money into a bank account or a building society account. There are often incentives in the sense that if the club gets promoted or qualifies for the Champions League, then there could be additional payments made. At the same time, that comes with risk because if you stick your money in a bank, you are covered by a government. A government bond, so that I think is it the first £75,000 is guaranteed by the Financial Securities Association or something, FCA or something like that. Whereas in football, if the club goes bust, you're knackered because it's an unsecured loan that you are making to the football club. We've seen with the number of clubs that have gone into administration that it's not a risk-free industry. So I would say to Connor, if you've got a portfolio of investment and you want to get something which has a high coupon rate, then it is worth considering. Would I put all of my money into one of these? Certainly not. So it's like all investments; they come with a level of risk. It's beneficial in the sense that you will get a high rate of interest, but there's no guarantee that the club's going to pay it. And as far as I was concerned, for me, Norwich, I think, is such a well-run club that the risk of non-payment I always classified as low. But that's up to you, Connor, or any other people listening. That's for you to make that assessment.
Kieran, you'd make a terrible spy because you started by saying you weren't going to tell us which clubs you lent money to, and now you've told us it was Norwich. Do these clubs, Kieran, market these as an investment opportunity, or do they market them as a way of helping the club and helping yourself to a degree as well?
I think they ride both horses with respect of that. In respect of Norwich, I think it was for new training facilities. In respect of Wimbledon, it was in respect of the funding for the new stadium at Plough Lane in Wimbledon. And we've been there. We did our first live show there, so we've got a huge affection for the place. And it worked. They have in the main proven to be pretty popular with lenders, stroke fans.
Yeah, and these clubs that have done it, they're very responsible. I mean, there's no element whatsoever of these being fly-by-night investment schemes. They're all very well researched and very well put together, aren't
they? They are. I mean, there are all 92 clubs worthy of the same degree of generosity?
Yeah.
If I was a lender, right. I would say no.
Okay.
So I think you've got to assess it on a club by club basis.
Yeah. David Martin has a question that we always like because there's an element of nostalgia involved. Because when it comes to football and music and nothing else, we are quite nostalgic. David Martin says, I recently watched a documentary about Nottingham Forest, and looking at the state of the pitches in European games in the 70s and 80s, I started wondering how much modern clubs spend on groundskeeping and what the regulations are regarding the quality of pitches. Can you shed some light on these two things? As it happens, David, for another project, I've been researching the FA regulators on pitches, and they are, I think even Kieran would nod off at some stage, because they are microscopic indeed. The level of detail that the FA set out about the quality of pitches at all levels is astonishing, including at some stage the shade of green the grass can be, the length of grass. The pitch regulations are incredibly detailed. But as to how much that costs, Kieran, can you shed more light?
Yeah, and the Premier League are the same. It can't be longer than 30 millimetres. Something I hadn't thought of, but hold on, what's going on? You can only have straight lines on the way that the grass is cut. Because I used to love some of the really wacky groundsman's productions, but no, that's all been binned off. And it's got to be, and this is, I think our silver-tongued lawyer friends would love this. It's got to be predominantly natural grass.
Yeah.
In terms of the definition of artificial grass is so what predominantly means is I think that's got to be worthy at least 3 or 4 days worth of discussion in a law court.
Well, also their definition of artificial as well. It's in the FA's rules about the quality of artificial work. You're lucky, David, that you've got us to do these things for you, basically, because you don't want to go there. Complicated, let's put it that way.
Yes. But in terms of the costing, I think you'd be looking at a minimum of 500k to install a pitch. But I think some of the Premier League clubs certainly play a significant multiple of that. And then you've got the ground stuff yourself. Now, I have a friend who worked at a Premier League club on the ground staff, and I won't mention his name because he might be upset if I did. But he said you would normally have 3 to 4 groundsmen at the stadium working on various things. On top of that, you'll have 10 to 12. I was gobsmacked, 10 to 12 at the training ground. And then you'd have a head groundsman whose responsibility would be to say to the team, I want you to look after this area today or that area. So, it's an expensive business in terms of maintenance because it is a labour-intensive job. It's not like one of those. I don't know whether any. I remember once I bought a fridge, and it came along with one of the. You get these really weird free offers with one of those robot vacuum cleaners, which sort of switch themselves on and off automatically. The circular ones, which look like a giant frisbee. But they made Finley practically shit himself because we'd be out and all of a sudden this robot vacuum cleaner would turn itself on. We'd come home and Finley be cowering at the top of the stairs. So we had to bin that off. But you can't have sort of robot mowing of the grass. It is still a labour intensive. So it's going to be an expensive, especially at Premier League level when they've got training facilities which are so sophisticated these days. It's going to be a very expensive annual job as well, because that £1 million is for the pitch at the main stadium. But what we're now starting to see is that there's quite a few clubs that in their training facilities they will have one pitch which has exactly the same dimensions as that of the club itself, so that players sort of develop a muscle memory in terms of, if I'm standing here, I know it's 55 yards to the touchline, and they practice that, and that pitch will be cut in exactly the same way as the ground itself. So we are certainly talking at Premier League level millions. I know I saw, I think it was Gary Neville's documentary, the Sky's documentary and the BBC's documentary about Salford and the issues they had in terms of their training facilities. So it's, as you drop through the leagues, it's much reduced.
Yes, because of course at Premier League level you've got undersoil heating, which is compulsory. Then you've got the artificial lighting system that they need. The irrigation system is very, very, very expensive. I nearly made a terrible link there, Kieran, about how expensive it is to fly to Australia. But I would have been proud of it, and I'm glad I didn't. It's where our next question comes from, Australia. Jordan Larusso says, my question is about salary caps with our domestic league, the A-League, imposing one since its inception. My general understanding is that salary caps are meant to improve competitiveness of teams and prevent a team backed by a millionaire from effectively monopolising the league. As a keen economics student, I'm interested to hear your views on the impacts of a salary cap outside of the obvious ones. Is a club's income-generating ability restricted by a salary cap, for example? And how about the league overall? Have there been any leagues that have scrapped the salary cap to see clubs go under or conversely improve their finances?
Right. Sensitive topic, salary caps. The theory is you can have two types of salary cap. You can have, first of all, what's referred to as a fixed cap. And this is what the owners of the EFL clubs tried to do in Leagues 1 and 2 when COVID was around, or where COVID was around and we couldn't attend matches, should I say. COVID is sadly still around, as we all know. And there was a 2.5 million cap in League One, and there was a 1.5 million cap in League Two. And that's when we had our good friend Nick DeMarco came on the show to explain why he successfully defended that on behalf of the PFA. If that is the case, some clubs are significantly better off if they can get because they're generating a lot more money, and that additional money effectively goes to the owners. If you're originally below the cap, there's a danger that the cap becomes a target. That your players say, well, our wage bill is only 2 million. We know that the overall cap's 2.5, and they go knocking on the chairman's door or the chief executive's door demanding more money. So caps can work in both ways in terms of their impact. As far as working elsewhere, the Premier League did have a wage cap, and nobody knew about it because when they introduced it, it was quite easy to satisfy. So therefore, if you set a wage cap, we've got a wage cap, and you say it's £1 billion, and hold on, the average wage bill in the Premier League is only 150 mil, then it just becomes becomes a bit of a joke. But they did have a wage cap, and it was genuinely starting to have teeth. So therefore, the Premier League went and scrapped it, which seemed a bit daft, and they scrapped it. I think it was 2018-19. So that's where we are. I mean, the broad issues in terms of salary caps and the good versus bad is that there's a salary cap in the NFL, for example, and that works really well because if you're an NFL football player and you ask for more money and the club says, well, we go above the cap, what else are you going to do? Because you've got the NFL or the NFL. Whereas if we take a look at what's happened with rugby union here in England, there were lots of clubs that were losing a fortune when the game turned professional. They introduced a salary cap. So what did the players do? They said, well, there's not a salary cap in France. We're off to France. Yeah. And it's similar in, paradoxically, there's also there's a salary cap in rugby league, which is about a third of the cap that you get in rugby union. So what are rugby league players doing? If they're promising at all, they say, we love the game, and I love rugby league. I've lived in the Northwest for most of my life. I love going along to rugby league games, but they're leaving rugby league to go to rugby union. So salary caps are distortions to markets, and in my view, they're quite a crude tool. Which doesn't work particularly well.
Interesting enough, I was listening for reasons that escape me now, because I thought there's so much sport. I had 5 minutes in the kitchen doing something, and I thought, I've been watching sport all day, and I'm going to be watching it all evening, so I'm going to have the radio on to listen to some sport. And it was Magic Saturday, did they call it? Rugby league, where there's like 6 games in a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I was listening to. And honestly, the commentary and the pundits are just fantastic. But at least twice during that 5 minutes, they mentioned separate players were going off to play rugby union in France. So that explains why. So our penultimate question comes from Lee Blunt. I'm going to stick with Lee Blunt because there's a random O in the name, so it might be Lee Blount. But since the bin face saga, when Guy introduced random letters into names, I'm reluctant to do any assumptions about anybody's name now, especially as I've just noticed that Guy's added a T to the end of Lee.
I've seen that too. Yes.
So it could actually be Light Blount. I don't know. But let's stick with Lee Blunt rather than something that sounds like a colour. We're going to do the back room Light Blount. It's lovely. I don't know why I said it in that voice. Lee Blunt says, thank you for the fantastic podcast. He may have changed his mind about how fantastic the podcast is now.
Yes.
Thank you for the fantastic podcast, said. That's very kind of you to say so, Lee. Thank you. A friend put me onto your fine work, and I'm currently working my way through the back catalogue.
You are brave.
Well, also, if he's working his way through the back catalogue, he won't have any idea what the Binface saga is yet. He's rendered even more pointless. So anyway, Lee says apologies. No, you shouldn't be apologising, Lee. We should be apologising to you. Lee says apologies if this has been asked already and I've not got to it yet. It hasn't. Actually, Lee, so you're laughing. I'm interested to know the final outcome, if there has been one, of the Adrian Mutu saga. He was fired by Chelsea, who for the past 10 years have been pursuing recompense through one court after another. From memory, there was talk about trying to get money back from Juventus Sampdoria, who had possibly signed him while the situation was in some murky grey area. Mutu, of course, sacked for drug use. But at least there's any info gladly welcome for me to put this one to bed in my mind.
Okay, well, Lee, or Leet, depending upon whether Guy's got this spelling correct. Again, as Kevin has hinted at, Adrian Mutu was a Romanian player. He was signed by Chelsea, and he then failed a test for cocaine. He was given a 7-month ban by the FA, and Chelsea said, "You're in breach of contract. We're going to sack you." And they tried to recover the unamortised element of his transfer fee, which was £15.5 million. And that went to a few arbitrations, and Chelsea were indeed deemed to be in receipt of that. But Mutu by this stage was in Italy. They weren't getting very far trying to get the money from Mutu. He went to 3 appeals. 2 ended up in CAS, and because he had joined an Italian club, Chelsea said, "Well, if he signed, we've sacked him. You've now signed for an Italian club. We've not had compensation, so we now start to try to get money back from the clubs that he's joined." That didn't get particularly far. I think the most recent court case in respect of this, because Mutu would be bankrupt if he paid their money. Also, I think he's had 4 divorces.
Wow.
He's all of whom appear to be models.
Mm.
So I don't know whether he's making some. Perhaps he's not a very good. Perhaps he's not the best people to be with. Taking drugs, and he doesn't seem to be able to stay married very long as well. He's now back in Romania. It looks like Chelsea have not had the money. How they're going to get through the Romanian courts, I suspect they will struggle there. So it's just one of those things. It did seem like quite a harsh decision, perhaps at the time. Not that we are condoning or encouraging people to take cocaine at the workplace, but I think this was more to do with the fact that they wanted to sack him because it was Mourinho was the manager and he didn't like Mutu, which was an issue we've already discussed in respect of other players. So as far as the position at present is concerned, Lee, my understanding is that it's an outstanding amount which is still due to Chelsea, and they've got 2 hopes of getting it, which is Bob Hope and No Hope and Bob's dead.
Yes, you do realise, Kieran, you inadvertently encouraged or condoned people to take cocaine at home. You specified.
Oh, right.
You specified.
Yes.
Don't do it in the workplace. I think producer Guy might like us to say, try not to take it at home, kids. But what you do in your own time is fine by you. It does make Mutu doesn't sound like a decent chap, does he? It doesn't make you wonder how he sleeps at night. And the answer, of course, he doesn't. But there you go. Our final question comes from Neil Sterland.
Do you think he's related to Mel?
Oh, I don't know. I wonder. Oh.
It's not a common name, is it?
No, it's not actually. No, it's a good question. We'll have to find out from Neil. Let us know. And at the rate we're getting around to answering questions, we'll find out in about 7 months. But we may find out quicker because it's handy that this is a question about Plymouth Argyle because we are coming to Plymouth Argyle next for our 3rd live show, and we will be there at the end of September. The date is yet to be finally confirmed, but we are definitely going to Plymouth Argyle at the end of September. So we look forward to seeing you there. If you're from Plymouth or indeed from Devon, and we are really looking forward to it. I can't wait to get back. I've been to Plymouth. I've spent so many happy weekends in Plymouth. with my first girlfriend. I can't wait to get back. She's not still there, just before, in case anyone wonders if Ali's listening to this. Neil Sterling says, prior to Christmas, my 6-year-old decided...
She's not. She's
No,
not,
she's not.
Kevin.
No, she's not.
We've
You're
established
quite right.
this.
She's not listening to you. Fair point. Fair point. Prior to Christmas, how did, speaking of partners, how did the gin afternoon go for the Baroness, by the way?
Well, the Baroness was very, very cheerful because she was. You always tell by sort of why have you sent me 6 texts in the last hour to tell me that you love me? Yeah, this was sort of like 8:00 at night. And whilst I was rocking out to Pearl Jam, she was in the equivalent heaven because there was a Take That tribute band at Gin Fest.
Oh my god!
Which by all accounts was amazing. When we started dating, I decided to take one for the team, and I took her to see Take That the musical. I think it was called Never Forget, and I wish I could never forget that experience. And it was in London. It was 75% hen parties, 25% gay male couples, and me. And it was one of the most painful experiences of my life. We've all got different musical tastes.
Yeah, so you say that. You try working with them for 5 days on an ITV Christmas special. Two of them, let's just say, are never going to win Mastermind. Let's put it that way. Anyway, sorry, Neil, you've had to wait a long time for the answer to this question. Prior to Christmas, my 6-year-old decided he wanted a Plymouth Argyle goalkeeping kit because he wants to be Michael Cooper. I had a look on Argyle's website and couldn't get one. You could get the home goalkeeping kit, but only away shorts. So I popped along to the club shop to pick one up, and there were none in stock because his son obviously wanted the away kit. I asked when they would get more in, and was informed they will have no new stock until the new kit is released, as they'd sold through their quota. My question is, and again, it just shows how obsessed our listeners are with kits, is it normal for EFL clubs to only get a set amount of units per season from the kit makers? Argyle seem to be losing out in lost revenue, as they could have sold a load more kits at Christmas and for fans' birthdays, etc.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. As far as clubs are concerned, the manufacturers tend to do production runs because quite often they are producing for they might have a dozen clubs here in England, they might have clubs here in other countries around the world, and therefore they estimate what they consider to be an appropriate level of kits to be sold. They do that on the basis of past experience, and they do that through the sizes. What the clubs don't want to do is to be left in March/April. We've got 27 home goalkeeper shorts that we've not sold in youth sizes, and therefore we're going to have to go and sell them at the end of the season at below cost. So the club ended up losing money. So it is more difficult as you drop through the divisions, trying to get those numbers accurate. And it does mean that there are, unfortunately, as Neil's son has experienced, that that there will be some sizes and there will be some product lines which have simply sold out because they might have said, well, 6-year-old away goalkeeper shorts, we'd probably only sell half a dozen of those. Yeah. And if you're the 7th person, we know that our friends at Plymouth listen to the show. So if they want to get in touch with us, we will do all we can to try to make sure that Neil's young man is looked after in terms of when the next kit comes out.
Yeah, yes, we will. That's very kind of us. Thank you for that, Kieran. And thanks to everyone who has donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to join them and make a small monthly contribution to the pod, go to patreon.com/priceoffootball. And if you thought that the date of our next live show was the only thing you had to announce, you were wrong, because we've got some good news for our Patreons coming up in the next week or so. We're actually going to offer them something, Kieran, on a weekly tangible basis. Whether they want it or not, I don't know. But it's finally we've decided that we need to do a bit more for patrons and occasionally read out their names, which it turns out, with hindsight, Guy may have written down wrongly anyway. So, and of course, if you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. And in the meantime, I know he's got another exciting day ahead. I shall hand you over to the customary care of Mr. Kieran Maguire.
Well, as always, folks, thank you very much. And quite a few of our Patreons have been in contact with us over the course of the last 2 or 3 days, because I have been able to give out some audible codes for the spoken version of the Price of Football book. And by all accounts, it has been successful in curing insomnia, as predicted. So that's one way of supporting the show, and we'd love to see you in Plymouth as well, for those people living in that area. I wouldn't travel from overseas to see it. Yeah, we have to be realistic here. When I went to see Pearl Jam yesterday, they had lots of people showing the flags of the countries they were from. I go, well, I think we might struggle to match that. But
I don't know. I could imagine us walking out on stage at Plymouth Argyle, would see loads of middle-aged men waving flags. There might be one from Cornwall. Kick it off. No, because what we like to do at Mebian and Kerno. I went out with a girl once who was part of the Cornish Liberation Front, which I don't think actually existed. But what we encourage people to do, Kieran, rather than wave flags, of course, is turn up in their football shirts. So that's
absolutely. So yes, there's another way that you can support the show, and that's to go to the app which you listen to the show through, and you can give us a review, because it helps us in the charts. It boosts us in terms of the algorithm, according to producer Guy, and it genuinely makes a difference in terms of when we're trying to book people to come on the show as well. Myself and Kevin, we normally work out that we are supposed to be on the show, but trying to persuade others is more complex. And by all accounts, it doesn't matter what you write in the review. So you could say you'd rather see it presented by Dappy from N-Dubs and John Craven. And I think that'd be a fantastic show. But it wouldn't bother myself and Kevin. Our egos can cope with that.
From experience, I can tell you that one of those two people would last about 35 seconds before going off to meet somebody important, and then coming back again for another minute, and would last for another 35 seconds. And let's just say it's not John Craven. Okay. Some people's attention spans are even shorter than mine. You do occasionally have to persuade me to come on the show. You have to persuade me to come on at 9 o'clock.
I'm sorry about that. That's
all right. That really was quite a tense one. I thought it was a misprint.
What is 9 o'clock?
Just to accommodate your gallivanting this weekend. I know you're having a comedy day today, so I hope you enjoy the shows. And we'll see you all next week, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.